All right. Welcome to the season podcast, Peter Clout.
Thanks for having me.
Let's rip right into it. So we're going to talk a bit today about your business. Going to talk about you. So always like to start a little bit with you.
Yeah.
Before we get into the business stuff. So maybe a bit of background about Pete, who he is, where'd you grow up, the business, whatever you want to cover off early.
Yeah. Okay. So the business, Family Wealth Advisory, Sylvania. We're local to the Shire. Financial planning business. Been there for 9 years. Lived in the Shire for 20 years. Came from Panania. Lived in Panania most of my life with parents, mum and dad, brother and sister. Went to local school, then went to a boarding school. Wasn't a boarder, but went to an agricultural school, selective school. Grew up there.
Why didn't you board?
It was a local school. It was at Glenfield, so it was a bus and train away.
Yeah.
But half the school was boarding kids, country kids. Half was locals. So good school. Took me through to, I suppose, uni, and went to uni for a couple of years. And then
Studying
business computing.
Yeah, your pathway to financial advice.
Yeah, well, business part was in there, so I got to that. Yeah. But the computing part, not so. Lucky we've got IT professionals these days, because the computing is really not. I didn't really learn a lot, but yeah, that was a couple of years there, and then into banking. So I got into banking, worked with Chase Manhattan for a couple of years. Deutsche Bank,
what
UBS.
Were you doing at Chase?
Just back office operational work. The bank used to have large clients, big settlements on bonds, so we were looking after the bond part of their world, custody type work. But there was big numbers, big clients that we were sort of settling deals for. Did that for a number of years.
As a young man?
It was fun. It was, didn't have any commitments. So you get to work early, you'd leave work late. You go out, you go home, get on the last train home, get up in the morning, go back and do it again. So it was, it was a good atmosphere at work, because there was young people, pretty well paid, but the option to, have a good time after work in the city.
Based in...
It's middle city.
Yeah, in
Sydney.
Sydney, yeah.
So down Wynyard Way, lots of good bars down there. So, but we work hard. We work a hard day and then go out and celebrate just about every night, or a couple of nights a week, and then weekends was sport. So, but did that for a few years, then moved out. And
so from Chase you went...
to Deutsche Bank, was there for a couple of years, working pretty much with the... repo desk and bond trading desk, then UBS.
So you made your way through the international banks.
Yeah, so there was at that time, someone offered you more money because they knew you in the business, you'd move on. UBS was a bit more of a management role. Went through the Y2K. Oh yeah. So there was about 12 months of planning for an event that didn't happen. But that was, it was an interesting place to work. Again, same sort of culture. We worked pretty hard. We had a good time. And then eventually from there I think I went overseas. After Y2K, went overseas for 3 or 4 months.
After you knew the planes weren't going to crash.
Yeah, that's right. Everything was working. three months over in Europe, travelling, and then came back to a Commonwealth Bank job.
Oh, yeah. Was that still
same sort of job,
trading,
custody?
back
Yeah,
office?
so I knew someone that needed someone in the sort of assistant management type role, and that's when I realised that wasn't for me. So that was over 20 years ago.
So you made your way through a few international banks, went overseas, came back, but it was all on the trading side of the operation side of the trading business.
Yeah. So we were doing settlements, so there was money involved, and
was that more institutional type clients back then? Yeah, so
massive,
you're doing institutional.
It's custody work, so you're holding assets for investors, large investors, so banks and but large commercial paper or government bonds or that sort of thing, there was a settlement process, and we looked after that. So day to day there was a daily cut-off, so there was a bit of pressure in that role as well. So you had to settle things by 4 o'clock, or there'd be massive losses. But it was that atmosphere was good.
A good grounding, but also on the process, like of how
good for process, but deadlines. Talking to people, if things weren't moving or working, you're on the phone talking to people, building relationships with other people at other banks. So it was a good grounding, but you're dealing with people that didn't really care about that money behind them.
Yeah, there was a job.
That's where it was. I'm dealing with institutional money rather than people's
individual
money.
Yeah.
So that's where Commonwealth Bank had enough of this. I want to work with people. Sought out a friend that knew a person who owned a financial planning business and started as a shit kicker in just a local boutique financial planning business.
Where was that?
That was at Ramsgate.
Oh yeah.
Rocky Point Road. So
and what were you doing? Like, what was that job?
I walked in there as called a paraplanner. So a paraplanner is the person that puts the plans together, but I had no idea what it was. So I went in there, did all the diploma work. So I studied, got taught on the job, picked up pretty quick. Pretty quickly I was in meetings with clients and with an advisor that wasn't all that confident with her work, and sort of pretty much straight away I was sort of giving solutions before she was in meetings and things like that. So I was sort of took to it straight away, loved it straight away, be able to give people an answer or an idea, a way past what they were after.
And is that a little bit maybe from, so when you're talking about the operations roles, I'm assuming there's a lot of problem solving in...
Well, the operations role was dealing with someone on the other end of the phone that was just an intermediary, right? Now it was dealing with someone who had a problem face to face. So that's what I was after.
But you'd had that, you had that grounding of thinking through problems.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
you'd sort of almost build up some experience in that area. So it wasn't that you were, whilst you might not have known the details of the planning part, you still had some good skills.
Well, at that time I was picking up the details of the planning part, and what I was reading in the textbook resonated straight away with the client in front of me, and I was able to say, well, maybe this is an option. So yes, problem solving from the previous job led into that, but that was more around my interest in helping or have an answer for someone really, and picked it up straight away. Yeah, from just on the job. Straight away you get into the...
and you probably feel a little bit more... Was there some... If I'm just reading what you're saying with the operations roles, you're a bit disconnected from what's actually happening.
Exactly.
And then you've got someone right in front of you where you're like, I can actually make a real difference.
Yeah.
Because there's
That's 100% it.
Someone right in front of me that I can help with.
That was 100% it. That's why I changed. I wanted to sit down with someone face to face and make a difference rather than, I'm talking to someone on the other end of the phone that doesn't really give a shit about what's happening. But let's do our job. And didn't really affect anyone directly. So this is a direct line into someone's life. Be able to help them.
Yeah, and that was something you then gravitated to straight away.
That's what interested me, and that's I nearly lost more than 50% of my salary changing that career at that time. So it was a big jump, but it was something I felt like I wanted to do.
Okay. So and was that something that was always on your mind, or just over time you went, I'm a little bit...
Well, the jobs I had, there was a career there. Could have set myself up.
Just going through the management line of...
Just keep on going. Just staying in the same place, doing a good job, you'd move up the ladder. But it wasn't that connection with what I really wanted to do, and that was, sort of... I say serve the people, but that's sort of where it was headed to. Yeah, right. And there's a bit of background behind that. It sort of comes from Dad's side that he was a public servant for most of his life. Gotcha. So I feel like that's where it came from.
You watched him do his part to give back.
And not that I really acknowledged it while he was doing it, but now you sit back and you go, he's been working with certain ministers his whole life, and he was a public servant. His job has been to serve the public pretty much his whole life. And, in some way that's flowed through to how I wanted to be a servant to my clients, not public service as such, because, we're a private practice or what have you, but, serving people.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to work that out and actually acknowledge how much he did, because, I thought, I want to be a business owner. Why would you be a public servant? But people have their different ideas on how they can lead their lives, and that was the way he did it. I wanted to go the other way.
Yeah. And so it was more through osmosis, like watching, and like all of it, that stuff comes later as you get older and you mature. You don't really understand it right at the time.
No.
But more, it's more the role modelling of the way to look after people and all the rest of it. So, okay, so you're in Ramsgate, you're making your way through that practice, I suppose, in terms of finding your feet. Where did you go to? What was the deal then? What happened after that?
So I'd only been there a year or two, and they decided to sell the business. There was another advisor there. The option was to go with the new advisor or go out on my own. So
how old were you now?
I was, late 20s.
Okay.
I've been doing it for a year or two. I had my enough qualifications to be an advisor, so I was like, let's do this. Yeah, this is what I want. But it's a big jump, right? It's going from a salary to running your own business. At that time, so the business just split. The older advisor took, majority. I took a certain part of the clientele, and I paid for that. So I had a small business. I knew my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time. I operated out of an office in a house that her parents owned. So it wasn't their house, but it was a house that had been inherited. Set up an office and started working there. So,
did you if I just go back a step, did you have to? How did you fund the purchase of
yes.
I want to just gloss over the fact that at 20-something you decide you're going to take on a business that you've only, reasonably recently just started, but there's some risk there to go, well, I've got to buy these clients and keep them. How did that work out?
So at the time, the licensee offered finance. So they could fund the purchase of a book. So it wasn't a big book. It was hardly anything really when you think about it. So it's a bit of a loan there, but it was funded. They provide the finance. And I really only did it because I did have a bit of a relationship with the clients that were in that book. It wasn't a lot, but
enough to cash flow.
Well, to get it started, right? And I think I had a good relationship with those people, and came across. It was just seamless for them. Otherwise, they were going to go. They either weren't going to stay with the business that was there. They become what's called orphan clients and go back to the licensee and just end up with someone they didn't know. So, did that. There wasn't that many clients. Within the first 3 weeks, my biggest client left. So, what was it? Around about, I don't know, maybe 5% of revenue walked out the door first week. So that was, start again and move on. But, that's sort of exactly what I wanted to do at that time. I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be talking to clients, and I wanted to start building a business. So it worked out. We were lucky. I was lucky. Bianca, my wife, she was working. She pretty much supported us for 6 to 12 months cash flow wise. We weren't paying rent. We were supposed to be paying rent to the in-laws, but we sort of back paid that later on. But, we could get by in that time, and that just set us up for the next step. So, but it wasn't, it wasn't
roses and cakes.
No, it wasn't. It was,
so you got your scar tissue.
Bit of a blind jump over the water, but, there was something there in me that just wanted to do it.
And is also a general attraction to finance? Because I'm assuming that there's a personal part of this of planning and all the rest of it, but you've got to know finance, you've got to know numbers. Where did that come from?
Always had that. Always liked maths, always done well. Maths was sort of my better subject at school, like commerce, like economics. don't really know where that came from. I do tell a bit of a story around family ties.
Oh, yeah?
Michael J. Fox was Alex P. Keaton, and he was a bit of a economics nerd or whatever it was. Anyway, I used to like that image, right?
Yeah.
So he was smart enough to give advice to his parents and people like that. So that sort of triggered my interest.
Gotcha.
That was a long time ago. And I don't really tell a lot of people, but now I've told everyone. Stupid story, but, you know, that's where it sort of, I like that idea of understanding more than the layman or the normal public person in public that didn't have an idea, and being able to give them the solution or the financial strategy to achieve
whatever they want to do. Yeah.
So that's where it sort of started.
Okay, that's interesting. So did you have your Reebok blow up pump shoes as well?
No.
Was that
no?
Yeah, the hoverboard.
No, didn't have that. No, that was before.
DeLorean.
That was family
Is that
ties.
on the? Is that on your financial plan?
That was pre.
Is a DeLorean on your?
No, none of that. None of that.
So it hasn't carried on.
No, I don't have the almanac. If that's what you're looking for, I'd love to have that. Yeah.
Go back in time.
Yeah.
You don't mind a pun.
No, go forward in time. Have those. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. So you went through. You bought that business.
Yeah.
That was your own practice, was
it?
Yeah,
it was mine. So
completely standalone.
Had the finance, my own practice. After a year, I'd set up a JV with an accounting firm. Merged into that. We operated, looking after their clients, my clients, for a couple of years, and then it dissolved. Just didn't work out. At that time, I sold my practice and went and worked for St. George as a financial planner.
Yeah, right. Back into the big banks.
Yeah, so that all coincided with, pretty much the GFC. So it was sort of a funny time for everyone. But stayed at the bank for a couple of years and then left.
How was that? How was working in the bank? Like,
it was funny because I ended up in a role. It was like a wealth planner role. So St. George had typical financial planners sitting in the branch. And then they had this idea where they wanted to service business banking clients with a wealth planner.
Right.
So we weren't stuck to a branch, we were stuck to an area, but we were talking to business clients. So, still keeping ties with that business side of things, but providing financial advice to those guys. So it was a really attractive role. So it was a good role to move into. I was able to take some of my clients that I had, like personal clients, with me, so they stayed with me. So I had, a book of clients. I had new clients coming through these referrals through the St. George network, and I did that for a couple of years, and to a point where it was time to leave.
Yeah.
Ended up getting a friend, referring me to an existing financial planner, Michael Bova, who ran Family Wealth Advisory. Started working with him, as a casual. Within a few weeks, I think he'd offered me a full-time role. Just got in there, and I wasn't advising at that point. He was the advisor. I was pretty much doing all the grunt work, paraplanning, writing the advices, admin, that sort of thing. But that flourished from there. The business took off. He was bringing great new clients. I was at the back end making things happen. We employed good staff that continued that. And then, I just had a chat with him one day and said, I want to run my own business at some point, or be a part of this, have a bit of ownership in this business. So that's my long-term goal, was to build a business. And he came up with the idea where I would set up an office in Sylvania Waters within an accounting practice down there we already had a relationship with, and I'd run that. So that's where it started 9 years ago.
Yeah, right. And so how long were you working in that business before you spun off that idea?
About 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And so you eventually moved through that, moving from doing the base work into then providing advice while you were still in there?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so you got into that, you sort of moved through into the...
Well, moved to the Sylvania office. We created that, and that's when I started, I was touching on giving advice within Michael's business, but it really kicked off with as an authorised representative as I came into that, into the new business that we created. So again, took some clients across, gave Michael the opportunity to moved some of his clients across to someone else so he could continue to build his book. He knew I'd be looking after them because I've been, pretty much working with them anyway for the last couple of years. And, it was reasonably seamless with the clients as well because they saw the same face, the same business name. Michael was there. But, it was typically local clients to the Sutherland Shire as well. So
made it easier for them to engage. Yeah,
a lot of them work with the accounting practice we were working within. So it was pretty much a easy transition, let's say. Again, it was stepping out into a world where I was running my own business as well, though. So it was time to grow.
Yeah, that was where my head was as you were talking. You were almost back to where you were at the beginning of the Ramsgate journey, and it was round 2.
Yep.
So you're like, right, okay, I'm here again. Yep. I've got was it a small client base that you'd sort of pulled together, and then you had to start. So what were some of the challenges, I suppose, early on?
Well, different to the first time. So I learnt my lesson. The first time was, I walked into I took on a couple of clients and I didn't have any grounding in terms of referrals or referral base. I didn't have a network. I didn't have a network. This time I had a bit of a network. But it's the same challenges. You're trying to look after a couple of clients, but you're trying to bring clients on all the time. And run a business, make sure there's enough money to pay yourself, pay the bills, pay the rent, pay the licensee. The licensee is a big cost. And just, I suppose, grow that business as quickly as possible.
And what are your disciplines like in that? Did you have to learn the hard way along that pathway, or have you always been pretty good with how to execute? Because I think that's where people do get caught out. Having worked with businesses, where people get caught out is they get so entrenched in the day-to-day, and then all of a sudden these things are popping up with their tax bills or whatever it might be. What were you like at the beginning? Did you have to were you typically good at that?
I was pretty good with the budgeting, knowing my numbers, and I still, I'm pretty close to my numbers now. Always knew what was coming up, was able to forecast, pretty reasonably what the costs are going to be for 3 to 6 months. I need to start bringing some clients now. I'm not going to be able to pay that bill or that bill. So cash flow forecasting, probably strong point. Sales probably wasn't a strong point. So, you go from a back office role or still working with people to, I have to sell myself every day now. That was the biggest challenge, I think. I knew all the rest. I knew how to get it processed. I knew how to be compliant. I knew the numbers. I knew what was coming in the door. I knew what was going out the door. Biggest challenge was sales. So, the business didn't take off like a rocket. It's slowly grown over time because I'm not a great I'm not your typical salesperson, I would say. Not that I wanted to be, but, to make a business grow, you need to be selling yourself at all times. So, that took a bit of time. That was probably the thing that took the longest to, come to fruition, let's say.
Yep.
And as you get older and further in business and more clients you have, the less you worry about sales. So you get better at it. It's weird.
What were some of the early, things that you had to force yourself to do?
Oh, you try and get people on board by not doing it free, try to show your wares before, any cost. Do pro bono work, things like that. So you'd offer up your services or time for nothing to, hope that one day down the track there'd be...
So give without that expectation of anything coming back necessarily.
In some ways, So that's what you give up. I suppose that's probably what I gave up at different times.
Yeah. Long lunches? Come on.
Do that, yeah.
You're known as a long lunch specialist.
Well, that's where the networking came in, right? So at the start, I suppose, I did learn that through working with Michael Bova. He was a very good salesperson, but he was also a very good networker. And, the odd catch up with people around you and sharing, their service of how they operate and you sharing how you operate leads to potential new business, right? So if you tell someone what you're doing and how you can help people, they have that in their head. Next time they're having lunch or talking to a client, they know that you're there. So that, so we started, long lunches. I did start up networking groups, a few different networking groups, golf games. So I'd organise monthly or quarterly golf games with a group of local business guys. That took a bit of time to organise, but we'd get out there. Then we had a group, somewhere in the order of 12 to 16 guys that were talking to each other, having a game of golf, having a beer. Joined another local networking group. We caught up weekly. We used to put on an annual fundraiser for charity. So started networking a lot more, and that's part of the sales process. That front end is that marketing as well. It's marketing yourself through networking. So the more of that you do, typically the more referrals you get, and then it's your job to sell to the client. So, but as I said, that gets easier as I suppose you get older and experience. And
but were you disciplined about that? Were you disciplined about that? I mean, I think I know the answer.
Disciplined around networking?
Around the networking.
Oh, yeah, very. Yeah. So weekly with one group, and, I really pushed the golf thing as well with that group of people. Sometimes there'd be 8, sometimes there'd be 16, sometimes there'd be 20 people, but I was organising it, so I was front of mind. And I was getting guys to talk to each other. So hopefully I was sort of the go-to guy. And, in some respects that hopefully did flow on to, extra client referrals and things like that. Not everyone's a referrer, but you only need to find 1 out of 20 that could be a good referrer. And by being in a few different groups, that's push things along.
And you had it was regular, right? So it was not irregular. And I think that's
it was
where,
all the time.
Yeah, and you still do that well now. Like, I mean, my observation, obviously, coming in and around your business over the last couple of years is that stood out straight away. And I'm like, all right, that's got to happen. And that's obviously a key part of what you do.
You don't like a long lunch, do you?
No, no, I'm horrible at a long lunch.
You've grown to that quite quickly, so that's...
for 1 week. It took 1 week to adapt to that new local business strategy,
But
but I had good leaders. I had good leaders and good mentors that showed me how to navigate through that.
Good stuff comes out of that, right?
Yeah.
Relationships, people you haven't met before, you get to meet. That's a big part of, and then there's that trust thing, right? So I was talking to you about trust. If people don't trust you, they're not going to refer you. You have a few beers and a bit of lunch. There's a barrier there that's broken generally.
There's a lot to be said for that, right? I mean, let's think about today's world where marketing's all digital. Yeah. And your business is built on trust and is built on relationships, and it's like there's only so much you can get across through a short engagement with someone. So so those groups and those referrals come with some skin in the game. Yeah. Because someone's put their name against that against you to say, go and talk to this guy. Whereas, I think in modern world, you're trying to build trust through the video screen, through your mobile phone, which is, it's just the way it is. Yeah. But
we're not selling flowers, so it's not easy to refer to, right? We're selling advice. People do, and typically lawyers are bad referrers because they're, there's a legal worry that they endorse you and you do a bad job. You got
to earn it.
That's right. The trust thing and the regular catch-ups builds that trust with referrers, and then that feeds into...
And I'm assuming some of those are clients. They become friends that become clients, and then they get to feel the experience.
After wearing clients for 8, 9, 10 years now, the catch-ups are less about financial stuff. It's more about their family and, what's coming, when's the next holiday and things like that.
Yeah, so you're going on the journey with them.
Yeah, and then that trust is there, and then that's what I'm seeing now is a lot of referrals from existing clients. So that's our business is, 50% client referral as a result of, time. Time and committing to what we've said we want to do, what we're going to do with them. So
we just touched on technology a little bit.
Yep.
In a relationship-based business, how does tech sort of dive in today's world with you?
I was so good at uni, the business computing just flows through to how I operate now. It's all tech.
On your Apple IIe.
Yeah, no. Look, my business, as I said before, a lot of the clients are local, so we like to see the face-to-face, but, we do use Teams a lot now. A lot of the meetings saves time for the client, saves time for us. So that use of tech feeds into more time working on clients, advice. We use DocuSign, things like that. Our internal systems are Iris-based, so Iris is a big firm. Our CRM is pretty much built there. Also, obviously, working with you guys. We're building a front-end sales management system, which has, changed how I track everything and keep up to date with those people at the front end. We're capturing a lot of new leads through the website. So the website looks great now. We can book appointments online. The clients can book appointments from the website. They can book it from a link in my email. So
haven't replaced the relationship. We just put the tools around it to
made it a little bit easier to catch up and get connected and things like that. So that's an ongoing thing.
So robots haven't replaced you yet. AI hasn't replaced you yet.
It's coming, right?
It's been coming for 20 years. If we've heard about robo advice for how long? I'm sure you've heard of. It's never happened.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? So advice is particular to each person, and it's different for each person. How can you build something that's going to be perfect for that person if you haven't delved into their own situation? You can't just take it from a cookie cutter idea or a billion comments on the internet and put it into a solution for every person. You can sort of build general strategies around your finances, but typically what I've found is that it works best when you're building everything to you personally, because everyone's got a different idea on what they're going to do in their lives, what they want to do in their lives.
Yeah, a lot of, I'm assuming, you've sat in front of thousands of clients over your career planning things. I'm assuming part of it, and at least tell me if I'm wrong, if this is the wrong assumption, but part of it's a feeling that you get from the person that's sitting across from you. There's the numbers, but then there's whether you can tell someone's stressed or excited about something or emotional or scared or I'm assuming, having done that a lot, you get a pretty good feel for the type of individual at an emotional level that you're not going to get out of a set of data.
Yeah, 100%. So emotion's a massive part of it. It really is. Typically people want three things in life. They want to pay off their house, they want to retire comfortably and help their kids. So they're all emotional about those sorts of things, right? Especially the kids, especially the house. But each person has different versions of that.
Pathway, yeah.
Or they're different version of some, want to help the kids out, some don't. But linking it back to that emotional state and connecting with that, you can't do that. I find it even hard now doing that through a Teams meeting or a Zoom or what have you. So, a bit of that connection you have with clients is lost when it's just online. Not saying that you can't get that back, but the face of what I found is AI replacing us. Maybe it will happen one day, but people still like that face to face when you're looking after $1 million bucks of their money. You give that to an AI bot or what have you, or something online to look after that money. Where's your trust level? Where's the risk level? If they can come and see me and we can show them.
So much input to even make that work, I'm assuming.
So
it's not to say it won't come, but it's an interesting topic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, what about you? If you're Gen X.
What's that? Is that under 40?
Yeah, no, under 50, right? How easy is it going to be for you and your wife to go on, or sit in front of a computer and listen to a computer tell you what you should be doing with your finances?
Yeah,
you're not thinking of that yet.
No,
well, you haven't seen anything like that yet.
Maybe we need to.
You might be thinking about it, but you haven't looked at it yet.
Need to avatar you.
But even then, if it's, you can avatar me, but I still want to be talking to you. one-on-one rather than so me as an avatar talking to 200
There's
people.
So much in that.
Each of the 200 has got a different story.
We might be old school, but there's enough old people around that are still.
Well, I think that's just still how it is, and it could change. Everything's changing, but I think tech for us means us using it to the best of our ability to increase the amount of time we can spend on the client.
Speed up the crappy processes.
But speed the time with the client.
Really
or thinking about the client. It's not all our work is done when we're sitting with you. It's
pondering.
Or modelling or,
Okay, cool. One of the things I wanted to dive into before we get into probably some of the more technical elements of financial planning was, obviously I know background. I know sort of you've had a really successful sporting career. You're lucky enough to represent your country. I don't know how many times. A lot, probably 70. And your state probably. More. Double or triple that. Yeah. What comes with that, and you've brought into your business in terms of success on the sporting field, that you've then also brought into how you run your business, and how much did even that contribute to how probably more your mindset and how you go about doing things?
Yeah, so I wasn't the best. I played softball for Australia. I wasn't the best player, but I did train a lot. Okay. But why did I train a lot? Why did I get better? Because in my mind's eye, there was something that I wanted to be. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be, the best player I could be, or best in the world, or whatever it was. But I wanted to be better. And for some reason, it was inbuilt in me that, you train to get better. And I enjoyed it as well. So similar to my work, I like what I do. And I want to be better every day, and I want it to be a bigger business, and I want it to grow, So, you say winning. Yeah, we won some games, we lost some games. In terms of my career, I felt like I won. It was because I liked doing it, and it was because I was just driven to the point where I would train more than most people. I'd do my own private training outside of the training, and again, I tried to organise teams. I tried to run teams, so I always liked to be part of that team, growing a team, and that's just flowed into, I get up in the morning, or want to get onto the computer so I can start working, right? So I can talk to the next client, I can help the existing client, I can grow that business.
How much is it? Just discipline.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just you call it discipline. Yes, if you're going to be successful, you have to have some sort of discipline, right? I get up in the morning. I start, at 5:00 in the morning. That's just how I do things. You call that discipline, or you call that's just what I want to do. But yeah, I'm disciplined in that. If you were to put it down to something, that's what I try to do every morning. Get out at the time and get started then.
I love the Mike Tyson quote. Have you ever heard the Mike Tyson quote? Something about discipline. Discipline's doing something that you hate, but doing it like you love it.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. Like, I think there's something in that. It's like, so not everyone loves getting up at 5:00 in the morning, but if you get up and you force yourself into that repetitive habit.
Yeah. I prefer to be asleep till 7:00, right? Yeah.
But if you get up, do it like you love it.
Yeah,
and it's actually
that is a disciplined approach which flows into the day, and flows into success. And you read a lot of books will tell you that as well, right? Get up early, start early.
Quiet time.
Yeah, but discipline just comes from a wanting to achieve something, I suppose.
So, yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we've covered off most of the who is Peter Clout. Let's move a little bit into financial planning, I suppose, as an industry. Recently, obviously there's been lots of different raps on financial planning over time. banks coming in and dabbling in it as they did, and then getting back out of it, and then there was obviously a nice Royal Commission that came in and threw the sort of cat amongst the pigeons. Yeah, what's been your observations, I suppose, post or pre and post the Royal Commission as to how the industry's shifted? And it'd be good just to get your insights on that.
Yeah, so it's an industry that wasn't built around professionalism. It was built off the back of insurance salesmen. So when I started 20 years ago, I suppose majority of people or advisors were insurance guys that were starting to give advice. Okay, so primarily around sales rather than advice or an advice process, or an ongoing advice process. In the last 20 years, as you said, the banks have left that space. Selling product has gone out the door, and it really has become more of a profession to be a financial advisor than it was what it was for the last 20 or 40 years. So Royal Commission took a lot of people out. New requirements, exams, professional development. You take guys that have been doing insurance sales for 20, 30 years and give them an exam to do with questions around self-managed super funds and retirement, and they're like, fuck, I'm not going to do this. Or I can't do this. Or I go into the test. It was a very hard exam. Can't do it. So, there's numbers thrown a bandied around that there's 28,000 advisors 3 or 4 years ago. Now there's 14,000. So it's been weeded out. What you're left with is half as many as there was 5 years ago, but you've got committed individuals to advice rather than selling product. So I think the industry's evolved to where I always wanted it to be, or where I thought it would be, and probably the other 14,000 guys that always wanted it to be. So the industry's improving, but there's this wave of boomers coming into that space where they want advice, they need advice. So it's it's busy, the busiest I've ever been. So, but it's a great space to be in because we can offer that.
Yeah, and so that old world was more like a trail commission style.
Yeah, they had
broking
insurance
style.
Commission sales and.
So it's go and build a book and then play golf Monday to Thursday and make sure you don't lose the book.
I think so. It was a bit like that. The last 20 years, I wouldn't say it was always that way.
But historic, there was sort of this.
And there's always those cowboys that try to sell off the plan products, property developers that say they're financial planners, they're not. There's an element of fraudulent investment advice out there, but I think that's sort of being weeded out a lot to the point where it is turning into a profession. Consumers can rely on it, and it serves a good purpose to the growing need.
Has it made it harder, to get advice?
Yeah, so I think so. Yeah.
Because is it less accessible? Or and maybe higher.
Yeah, so cost has gone up. What I would say is that there's a lot more people there available to pay for that advice now. The compulsory super started in the early 90s. So if you've been working since the 90s, you've been putting money away. You've now got a lump sum equal to or the second largest asset outside of your home, and if you don't have any knowledge of what that is there for or how it's going to support you when you retire, that's what we're here for, to provide advice around that. So it's changed a lot in that people do have a large asset now outside the home that they don't understand.
And so, is it fair to say that historically it was more insurance-led then?
I think so. Back even before I started, you sell an insurance product, you make 120% commission in the first year, and there's a lot of churn, right? So that
drove this different set of behaviours.
Well, you're selling a product, you're not providing a solution. You're selling a product every year, which may or may not be the right thing for the client. Typically, it wasn't. They're covered, but even the bank sales machine was get them in this product. We take a clip of that, but on the way in you take 3 or 4%, you know. So there was high fees again. The products that were owned by the bank, they get a clip from that. You know, there's a lot of issues with that, and that's changed, right? So
since the Royal Commission, or even before then?
Yeah, it started before, but I think that sort of knocked it all on the head. Banks are out, right? Banks are out of wealth. And consolidation of insurers as well in Australia's, you know, when I first started there was 12 or 13, now there's sort of 5 or 6 that you would use. You know, the bigger ones are buying out the smaller ones. There's a different issues for reasons for that, but you know, that's changed. That whole industry's changed as well.
And is the legislation still moving? I mean, post Royal Commission.
So, quality advice review, which is, you know, being looked at by the government, not all being agreed to, has been put in place to simplify people getting advice. It's not quite there yet, but as an example, currently we have to provide a statement of advice to clients which outlines you know, our recommendations, their personal situation, you know, the solutions pretty much to what they're after. That can be typically 50 to 100 pages long. The idea is to reduce that to something like 10 or 20 pages, which, you know, more consumer built rather than more compliance built.
Gotcha. Yeah, compliance led versus customer led.
And you can imagine, you know, if that happens, that frees up a lot more time for us to spend with new clients. So that's where it has to go. 28,000 advisors, now 14. With more people coming into that space, we need to have more time to talk to people because we're going to have more people to talk to. And do you think that hopefully, I think you're getting to, will reduce the cost of advice at some point, but it's not quite there yet. It's not quite there yet.
Yeah, because it means that you've got less administration overhead to produce something that could be quite simple.
Hopefully, You know, and with that tech getting better, you know, it wouldn't be a push button, but it'd be hopefully, you know, you do your...
We've got something vanilla that's a little bit easier for you to...
We can tailor it to the person, but then, okay. And typically people don't really look at those 80-page documents.
Well, that's the thing, right? Let alone understand them if you did.
It's there, you know, it covers their ass and mine, because, you know, that's our advice. We stand by what we've put in that document. But, you know, reading 80 pages, most people won't do that. You know, you've got a handful of people that might actually go through the whole document. So where's the value in that, right? So there's no value in that.
It's just legal.
There's no value in that to a consumer or
legal.
a client. So
and so how long before this review is finished? Is there a timeline? Does it go on forever?
The government keeps on pushing it back. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's still being looked at.
How long has it been going for? Like roughly, is it a couple of years?
Oh, right. Okay. Michelle Levy brought out her review. I can't remember the date.
But long enough. And
some things have been adopted, some haven't. They're still deciding on some. So, you know, hopefully that'll be... You know, I think the key one for us was around the statement of advice and how that might free up our time to spend more time with clients.
Less time producing documents, more time.
A compliance-based document rather than a consumer document.
Fair enough. Okay, if we sort of think about beyond advice and sort of, I suppose, in my head, thinking through, like, I suppose the flow of when people need help, you know, and the first probably step that someone who's a bit younger would take would be starting to thinking about investing.
Yep.
How do you typically approach, you know, someone who's knocking on the door, who's starting to talk to you about, all right, I want to build a portfolio of some sort? What does that look like?
You know, our process is a first meeting. You know, just let's sit down and have a chat about your situation, where you want to get to, and then, you know, a lot will come out of that. It's probably 45 minutes to an hour, but, you know, we can talk about what your plans are, where you want to be, where you are now. There's typically a gap, right? How do we fill that gap? And that's where you need advice. So first meeting, you know, it's really talking about you and finding out what you're after. After that, we put together advice. So we, you know, model certain strategies or multiple strategies to see which one works best, and then present it to you and help you set that up. So it's an easy It's not
cumbersome.
It's not cumbersome for the client. We've still got to do all our analysis and projections and, look at different scenarios for them. But, I suppose it's a couple of hours out of your time to get things set up for the future.
Are they typically coming, like what's the sort of investing? I suppose there's different stages of life, right? And you help plan depending on the different stage of life that you're in. What is there a typical moment for people when they come to think about they're thinking about investing versus getting ready for retirement? I think someone who's, I'm thinking more myself, like type in someone who's in that bracket where they're going, all right, well, what do we do with our money? Like, how do we, and that could be people are running into various forms of, that maybe they've paid off their home and now they have surplus cash.
Well, that's the key one. People don't usually come to talk to us until they pay off their home. Yeah, that's accumulators. Mm-hmm. The other tipping point is I'm going to retire soon or the next couple of years. So, but typically people going back to their house, key goals that people have,
clear that
house, retirement, kids. House always takes priority, and a lot of people who are good savers focus on debt first.
Yeah, inheritances, do they come?
Yeah, they're starting. We're starting to see a bit of that flowing through.
Starts to happen. Yeah. So people are thick because they might not be ready. Might not be in the retirement mindset. But then there's some income that sort of comes in, and so what you just work with
inheritance more of a lump sum, right? So we can help people with an inheritance.
Yeah.
Might be a sale of a property. So people that bought investment property 15, 10, 20 years ago made a bit of a gain. They might come to us for advice. How do we reduce tax or use that as leverage to go to the next stage, or retirement. So there's a few trigger points. My business primarily more around pre-retiree. So you're seeing a lot of people 1 or 2 years from retiring going, shit, I don't know what I'm doing with my super. What do I do next?
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, before I jump into pre-retiree, what does constructing a portfolio look like? Is that, what's your process? If you would explain for people.
You put a dartboard.
Yep.
And get them to throw a dart. Wherever it ends up, that's where they're going.
Triple 20.
No, each client's different. We do have an investment matrix that we take every client through at the first meeting and understand where they're comfortable investing their money. If it's 100,000, $1 million, 2 million, whatever it is, they have to be comfortable where we're planning to invest their money. And then once that's done, once we've decided we're comfortable with that, we put together the portfolio. We're typically, a passive index approach, but using multiple different assets and sectors to achieve, the portfolio that's required within that risk profile. So, so let's, for an example, Australian shares, say a client's exposure to Australian shares needs to be 30%. We use an Australian index fund, invest in the top 300 companies. We get that at low cost. Their money is invested exactly how we've told them it's going to be invested. ASX is up 1% overnight or during the day. Their money's up 1%. There's a small management fee there, but it's typically, 5 or 6, 7 times less than an active fund manager. So typically you'll hear about fund managers managing your money. We find that the passive approach works a lot better because they cannot outperform an index over time, and the cost is a lot lower. So less cost, more money in your pocket. So really it's working on risk profile and then allocating it to those assets that we use to build a portfolio, which includes Australian shares, international shares, bonds, gold, or
it's any commodity,
infrastructure,
okay, cool.
Australian property, international property, wide range. So our portfolios can nearly consist of tens of thousands of different securities, all following an index,
based on the risk profile of each.
Based on the risk profile of each, and then we typically with our clients sign an annual agreement to catch up with them twice a year. So at each of those 2 periods, we rebalance or recalculate what that looks like. If the portfolios move, we rebalance it. If there's significant events, we might be proactive and move some money around as well. So, it's not set and forget, but, tinkering with that risk profile is not, not recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Within the, within that risk profile, if it moves so far, you should move it back and keep it within that. Research suggests that following a risk profile is the best way to achieve what you want.
Yeah, gotcha.
For your investment.
And then how's that, so this is probably the leading question then into when you start to get into that window where you're thinking about retirement, so that sort of pre-retirement phase. How does that then shift? Like, so if someone's, proactively investing and they're generally just focused on building wealth, and then I'm assuming there's a tipping point where for some people that mean, or they haven't done that, and they're just cruising along in life, and then they get to some sort of tipping point and they're like, oh, hang on a sec, retirement doesn't seem that far away.
Yep.
What's that process then for someone who's starting to run up against?
Yeah, so it's another discussion around what risks they're willing to take. So when you're accumulating, you got $100,000, you're probably happy to leave it in all shares or property, high risk. But when you got $1 million bucks in super, and there's a chance that could drop by 25% in 1 year, maybe that's not where you want to be when you're about to draw down on that money. So usually that ends up in being a lower risk profile, and then it's about managing liquidity. So people going from earning an income to stopping work need to have an income come from somewhere, and that's the whole point of super, right? It turns into an income stream and you start drawing down that. But then, managing those assets within there is pretty important. So that's why we have 6 monthly catch-ups with clients. What are you spending money on the next 12 months, 24 months? If there's lump sums for holidays, we typically keep that aside, put it in a cash bucket or somewhere that's going to earn interest without any risk. And the rest of the portfolio, making sure it's working to keep pace with inflation, right? So if you're not getting a return above inflation by being in cash or the bank account, your assets are going backwards, or your wealth is going backwards relative to the cost of living. So
you effectively, when people are coming in and they're moving into that potential for retirement setting, you're working through those scenarios with them, are you, to sort of say what does retirement look like?
Yeah. So what's coming in the next 2 years, or
well, maybe that's a good question then, because actually, you when's the right time to start to thinking about planning for retirement?
Today, Todd. Today. Today.
Yeah, because you sort of you said 2 years. I'm thinking, okay, so like what? Well, then that's still relative, isn't it? Because it's
all relative to the person.
To when you think you're going to retire, and
and we've talked about this before, right? So someone who might be 20 might want to retire at 40. Super's no good for them at 40. They can't touch it.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people might come to me at age 50 and say I want to retire at 55. Typically, the best strategy is put money in super. But if you get to 55 and retire, and you can't touch your money till 60, can't touch your super money till 60, what am I going to do for 5 years? So, where you allocate your money becomes a function of what your plans are, what your goals are. And that's why it's important to have a conversation now, because you might have that plan to retire before 60, or you might have a plan to retire at 75, which means there's a whole different strategy around what we do with your money. So everyone's different. Everyone's got a different plan. Everyone's got a different outlook. When to start planning for it, it's probably straight away, right? And it might be an initial meeting just to see where you're at. Might be just a plan and a strategy and off you go. Or it might be a plan, strategy. Let's work with an advisor because we want to stay on track to make sure we do get exactly where we've talked about in this document. What are you seeing around retirement trends? Are people working and having to keep work more, or is everyone coming on? We want to get out earlier. What are you seeing? It differs. So it comes down to the person. So I suppose in the last 12 months, seeing business owners been in business for 30 years sell their business, but that was a manual type business. talking to clients in their late 50s, about retiring, their mind shifted to, we'll probably do part-time, or the job we've got right now, they've downshifted in role in the last couple of years already. So I've got a couple of these guys that moved from high council jobs to working at Bunnings, or lower stress, lower pay, but it allows them to travel still, right? So their wife's got a similar part-time job or something like that, or have lots of leave. They can travel, so they're travelling, achieving one of their retirement goals, but they can still work. And that's keeping them active. They don't like to play bowls. They don't want to play golf. They haven't got those sort of activities there. So they're working. And they, gone from retire at 60 to I'll keep on working until, such time I don't want to.
Yep.
So, but it's part-time and it's within their own terms, and they can still do some of these retirement.
So it really is horses for courses.
Well, it's all changed, right? So normally day-to-day before COVID, you could have a 9-to-5 job. If you had leave, you could take leave. Now it's, employers are happy to have people work from home or work part-time or work the hours they want to, take longer here and there, take time for travel. So things are a lot more flexible. So, at retirement, it has become more flexible. There's the people that want to, they've had maybe manually hard jobs since they were 18. They're 58, 60, 40 years, need to stop. Okay? Or,
Anything with the economic conditions as well? Like, are people having to readjust? Obviously, there's interest rates, inflation, all of the stuff that we know about without diving into it.
Yeah.
People having to sort of readjust and extend any of their plans? You see much of that, or people sort
There's definite increase in cost of living. That's, we're seeing a lot of review meetings. People are saying, I needed 70k a year, now I need 90. That's just for day-to-day stuff. So that's changed significantly. Retiree space as well. A lot of that's health insurance or car insurance or home insurance. Cost of living, groceries, everything. There's been a significant shift in what they need to get by. But a lot of clients that I talk to, pre-retirees, have a sufficient base of super or assets, but don't realise how much they do have or how long that's going to last. So,
right.
We've got the modelling tools to,
so they get nervous a bit, and then you sort of help sort of bring it back to reality.
Help them spend it, right? The whole point is that, you've saved all your life, probably worked hard, put money away. There's no good.
Enjoy yourself.
Well, there's no good working to 70 and then I'm going to get to 70 so I've got more money so I can travel. Because you might get to 70, you mightn't be there. You might be dead, or you might be able to travel, right? So 60 with a bit of money, the government allows you to draw on your super at 60, right, whether you're working or not. So there's things in place now that allow you to draw on that. So I think there's a lot more flexibility. Again, each person's different. Each family's different. We see differing plans and ideals from everyone, right? Every person has a different ideal. People have different travel plans. Some people you suspect that want to travel. No, we've already done that. We'll probably only travel Australia. It's only cost us $5,000 a year, rather than you go overseas, it might be 20 to 30 or 40 or whatever it is. So, their retirement plan is different to the person that wants to spend more. And then retirement trends, as you get older, you spend less typically as well. So while the cost of living has gone up, you're finding people in their 70s, 80s have still got quite a lot of money in super that they haven't spent. They thought they might, but they haven't. Because you get investment returns, you don't spend as much as what you think, and you end up with a pot of money. Gotcha.
How much of your role is people asking you whether they can spend money?
Well, it depends on the wife usually. The husband sits there and looks at it and I'll say that tongue in cheek, but
are you talking about whether people do ask, spend money?
People do ask, how much can we spend? That is a key question. Can I retire? very good, key question. And then it's our job to sort of take what their situation is, work out how much they are going to spend, and then show them how long that should last. Now, things change during that period. It's just a point in time. But, working through that journey with the clients and adjusting, those projections, gives them the confidence to spend or, they know they can't spend on that.
So pull back a little bit if required.
Or you don't want the stress of running out of money in retirement, but you don't. I don't want my clients to not enjoy a holiday if they can afford that. Right? We need to look at what they're planning to spend for the next 20 years. Can I take a 50k holiday now? Yeah, you can, because it takes a bit of a chunk.
Yeah.
But you've still got this money's going to grow, and if you really spend it all, the government's going to prop you up. They're going to pay you an age pension. So there's always a backstop there as well.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you build some of that even into your calculations.
100%. Ways to access more Centrelink pension for those that can get it. But two, enjoy the first 10 years, because the next 10 you're probably not going to spend as much as the first 10.
Gotcha.
Worst case is if you spend it all, you're going to hit a level where the government's going to give you, as a couple, 40k a year.
So let's talk about making money last in retirement. I feel like we've stumbled into this territory anyway. What does that process look like for your clients? So I'm assuming part of this is lifestyle to some degree, and like you said, everyone's a bit different. But I'm sure is that sort of the starting point when you're thinking about retirement?
There's a couple of key things, right? Yeah. One, how much have you got? How much do you want to spend? And then what tools do we have to help you enhance that? Right. So if someone came with $1 million and put it in the bank, they're going to get 5% return now. Inflation somewhere between 3 and 5 the last couple of years. Real return 0. Okay. So investment profile is very important because you're trying to get a return above inflation. Okay. How much are we going to spend? Yeah, that's a key thing. But, what government benefits can we utilise? Like, even if you can't get age pension, you can get health card assistance, things like that. What other assets, products are out there that can enhance income or guaranteed income? There's things like annuities, lifetime annuities, that help you get more age pension or help you access age pension but give you guaranteed income. So there's a raft of different things, but a lot of it comes around that risk profile. I think a lot of it's around that risk profile piece, making sure you're in the right space to make sure your money grows beyond the cost of inflation. That's the big one, right? That we've seen that already.
Yeah.
Last 2 years, what was 70k budget, now 90. If you had invested in a bank account, the money hasn't gone anywhere. It's gone up 5%, but, in real terms, it hasn't done anything. If it's invested, it's gone, the last 12 months, somewhere between 8 and 12%. You need that confidence to invest in that if you don't know how to do it.
Gotcha.
To achieve retirement outcomes.
Yeah, so you're effectively, you're helping them bridge the gap. Yeah. But you're also helping them bridge the gap between, if you take your example with your 70 to 90, you're saying we can bridge that gap. Yeah, but it's a change in strategy. It's a change in how you invest.
Well, a portion of the portfolio changes. That's pretty much it, really.
Gotcha. It's a proportionality. Risk. This is the risk part of it we talked about. Yeah. You just talked about age pension. Just what is that for people in terms of where this where is the cutoff?
Yeah. So
just roughly speaking.
Yeah. So let's talk about a typical couple.
Yep.
Homeowners, couple. They can have somewhere between 450,000 or less in assets. They get the full age pension, which is about 1,600, 1,700 a fortnight.
Does that include the family home? Or
family home excluded.
Excluded,
so you can have a $20 million home, 450,000 in assets, and get the full age pension.
Got you.
Okay. So that's a good strategy, right?
Got you. Yeah.
Build a house. Yeah. So back to that house, one of the three key things.
Yeah, so it's excluded. Is there any other exclusions?
Not really, no.
Super?
Super at a different age. So,
so ratchets up.
So say husband and wife, husband's 67, age pension age, wife, let's say she's 63. We can use some strategies to put money into her super, which isn't counted. So until she's 67, and then it becomes an assessable asset. Again, best way to get access to that or reduce those assets, spend money on the home. So renovations, that means money out of the bank account on your home. Doesn't get counted as an asset. Travel, spend money on travel. Government's happy for you to spend as much on travel as possible. Money out of the bank account, less assets. So there's strategies to enhance the amount of age pension you get. Annuities also come into play. Invest 100,000 in an annuity. The asset that is counted as 60,000. So there's products there as well. There's a lot of you do need advice before you go into that sort of product, but that helps enhances people's retirement outcomes and income specifically as part of their overall portfolio.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing that there's a lot of nuance in how to make this work and make it as effective as possible. Hence why you need to talk to an advisor to help you navigate. And this changes too, right? Changes what you knew 5 years ago and where it is today, and things are moving up and down with tax breaks and new governments and things like that. So half the time you're assuming just keeping up with movements and then allowing.
Well, you've got a budget every year. There's typically something in there for everyone.
Yeah.
So understanding how that might be of benefit to you. It wasn't so much in the last one, but over the years it has.
Yep.
As an example, I've just used annuity as a product. Back in the day, you could invest in annuities and they were 100% exempt. So that that's changed over time. Things like that change over time.
Yep.
So keeping up to date with everything. Super rules are probably the most confusing for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
When can I access my super? A lot of people think you can't access it till you're 67, which is the age pension age.
Gotcha. So there's just
there's most people.
Urban myths.
Next time you do a podcast, ask every person, ask them when they think they can access their super. I bet you they get it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have said 67, I think.
Yeah, but you can access it at 60. If you stop working, you can get it at 60.
Yeah, okay, it's interesting.
Okay.
Maybe just we sort of got into the territory of sustaining life and like having a strategy around. So it's one thing to have the plan, it's one thing to have the assets, it's one thing to have to move into retirement, and then I'm assuming there's a window where you're drawing out money and you're starting to make withdrawals. Is that something that you help families, couples, individuals navigate?
It's a big part of the day, that's making sure we catch up twice a year, talk about what's upcoming and, moving that money around to suit what that looks like. A lot of clients are coming in now saying, I was taking 2,000 a fortnight out of that. I need 2.5 because my expenses have gone up. So managing that. So how much cash have we got there to sustain that if there's a share market drop or, if we have another GFC event, are we prepared for that? Are we ready for that? Okay. So we don't take a lot of risks with our clients' money. We use a passive income, low cost approach. We stay within their risk profile. We allow for upcoming expenses, especially 1 to 2 years, lump sums. We're not there to make you get you the greatest return in the world, but we're not risking your money so much that you could lose it all, right? You're never going to be in that situation. I've had clients for 20 years, they have never run out of money. They only started off with $300,000 or $400,000, but they haven't run out of money. Their money hasn't gone anywhere, in fact, because the age pension kicked in, and once they get to that level, they're drawing on a pension 6%, let's say, settling income. They're making $60,000 a year, but their assets don't go anywhere. So we're not taking a lot of risk, but the idea is to stay in as much as possible, because this next step in the retiree life these days is aged care, and that's where there are significant costs, lump sum expenses, ongoing costs that need to be available to get you through that probably latest stage in life.
Definitely want to touch on that before we get there. What are the common regrets? I mean, you're in a really interesting role in that you get to see people move through their life journey. Now, clearly things happen, and, you know, insurance, I'm assuming, along the way is important for things that are unexpected.
Yeah.
And I know that's part of, obviously, what you do. But then I'm also thinking you're in an interesting position where you get to see people think through their future and then actually see it play out. What are the common regrets or things that you see that people wish they'd done earlier, or
just about everyone wish they started investing earlier.
Yeah,
especially in the super. You know, $50 a week, $100 a week does make a massive difference over 20, 30 years. Anyone can start that now. If you're an 18-year-old kid and you put $20 a week away into super extra, and your mate doesn't, I dare say you're going to have a few $100,000 more at retirement than he will. So it's an easy saving strategy, but that's where regrets do come from. Wish I had started putting money into super earlier. Only has to be a little bit. Doesn't even have to be much. Because that's the easiest way to save. Really is. Because $100 into super after tax or doing it pre-tax saves you, depending on your tax rate, anywhere between 30 and 50 cents on the dollar. So, you know, it's money it's going back to discipline, putting money away for a rainy day type scenario. You can't touch it till you're 60, but by doing so, you're going to have a big pot at the end of the day. And a lot of people say, you know, wish I had started earlier and done that.
And does that provide, and then what about do you see other regrets around, like hanging in there too long? I don't know, working too long, or, you know, not, you know, I mean, sometimes I suppose it's a reality. Like, you can't get around the reality of having to earn a living. But what, like, outside of,
I suppose some people say, you know, wish I had met you earlier. Maybe we could have retired earlier, or, you know, we could have started saving earlier. That sort of thing. You know, I don't see a lot of regrets. A lot of clients, I suppose, we see in our local area have got a house, got a bit of money, had a good life. So I suppose the only regrets would be they didn't start earlier. Yeah. Didn't buy that holiday house on the Gold Coast 5 years ago when they should have. Things like that.
Yeah. All right, we spoke about aged care. So what are you seeing happening in aged care, and what's the role of the financial advisor in supporting that?
Yeah, so best thing to do would be to talk to a planner before anything actually happens. Most people delay talking to a planner until mum or dad have a fall and have to move into aged care. They already had the event, and then it's a massive rush to work out what to do. Talk to a planner. You know, a lot of our clients that are retirees, we are talking to them about their parents at different times, pre what's going to happen. But in most cases, people have to sell their house to fund that entry into aged care.
Yep.
Okay. So at a high level, that's typically what happens. If there's money left over, we sometimes invest that, depending on, you know, the income needs or the costs to be in that facility might be very high. So how do we fund that? How do we help them create an income stream to pay those ongoing costs as well? And then if there's more than that, you know, how do we invest it for the beneficiaries? Typically the power of attorney is the beneficiary of the estate. So, you know, do they want their money invested a certain way? Because they're going to eventually end up with that. Mum and dad don't need it. They're looked after. What do we do with that money next? So,
and is there specific advisory capability required for?
It's more about planning. Like, it's just planning, financially understanding what's going to happen. A lot of people don't understand it. And then, you know, how do we invest, or how do we fund it? But then if there's money left over, what do we do with that as well? One, to make sure mum and dad are okay first, and then secondary, you know, is there a state wish, but the beneficiaries wishing to do something with that money, whether it be grow, don't leave in the bank account, or, you know, there's aged care annuities that we can use as well to help with an after-tax return, or a tax that, you know, you invest any extra money in a bank account, there's possible tax issues, you put it into deductible benefits, which mean you might have to lodge a tax return. Who wants to lodge a tax return when they're 80, 90 and aged care? So there's a few things simplifying, what they've got. So there's a bit of management. There's a financial plan for the next stage of their life.
Yeah. And what about also, I'm assuming there's situations where families are having to take care of parents where maybe that opportunity doesn't exist to sell a house and fund it. So
that gets a bit more technical with granny flat arrangements and things like that. So earlier you plan, the better. That's what I would say.
So you almost need to understand if you feel like you're going to be in a position to have to look after a parent or parents, knowing where they're at financially as well, because you may then need to be the person.
You have to have that conversation.
Yeah,
you need to have that conversation.
Yeah. And do you often get involved in that, or?
Yeah, sometimes we're in the middle of that, and then it becomes problematic when you've got different siblings in different states or different countries or different ideas about what's going to happen with mum and dad. So we're sometimes in the middle of that as well. What helps is that if we can give them this is what's going to happen financially, an answer, it helps the family make better decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Superannuation. We spoke about it.
We better fly through this.
No, we're not.
We've talked about it.
No. Well, I think one thing I want to talk about with super is the trend in towards self-managed super funds.
Yep.
But also, maybe before we get to that, we've spoken about a few of the misconceptions, which was good. You spoke about the fact that you can get access to super at 60 in certain circumstances. What are those circumstances for
so
people? Yep.
Age 60 you can access your super whether you're working or not. If you're not working, you can access the whole lot. If you are working, you can access it as a transition to retirement income stream, so you can withdraw between 4 and 10% of whatever your super balance is each year. So that's a common misconception. If you still work beyond 65, at 65 you got full access to your super, the whole lot. 67, age pension number. That's all it is.
Gotcha.
Okay.
What are the other things that people don't know just in general about super? I know there's rules changing about contributions and things like that.
So salary sacrifice, personal contributions, you can put in up to a certain amount each year to reduce your taxable income. Government co-contributions, like to use that strategy with kids, kids of clients. You might have a 17, 18-year-old child or younger, started working at Macca's, got some income, put $1,000 into their super, you can get a $500 benefit from the government, as long as they lodge a tax return. So there's simple little things like that, which will make a big difference to a child's super over time. It doesn't seem like a lot now, but $500 from the government is $500 that you didn't have. That's a $1,000 investment for your children. Whether they do it or not doesn't matter. You can put it in, but it's a 50% return. Yep. You're getting $500 for $1,000.
Yeah. And what are those?
Subject to certain income limits.
Yeah. What are those? Where's the super contribution limit at the moment?
27,500 pre-tax and 110,000 after tax. So you could put in, Todd, 27,500 from your employer or yourself, your employer contributions plus a top-up personal concessional or salary sacrifice. That changes to 30,000 next year. This year you can put in up to 110,000 after tax. So if you sold a property, had some money left over, you could put that money in up to 110,000 or 3 years in one go. So 330,000, which means you can't do it for the next 3 years or use up those 3 years. Again, that number changes to 120,000 next year or 360. So
you can allow, you can almost forward project. You sort of get the next 2 years off if you.
It indexes over time.
Gotcha.
It's not a exact when that's going to happen, but the government releases over time. I think it's April or so. They sort of say, that limit's going to index. Goes up in increments. So it was 25,000 pre-tax, 27.5. Next one will be 30. So it goes up in 2.5 increments based on some sort of indexation factor that they've used, but rounding it up. Okay, and that 25,000 was the non-concessional limit. And after tax is 4 times whatever that concessional is. So 25 was 100, 27.5 to 110. Next year it's 120. It's going to be 360.
Yeah, so, gotcha.
Oh, sorry. 30 is going to be 120.
20, yeah. All right, let's talk about SMSFs.
Yep.
There's a big trend in them. What's the difference between an SMSF and a stock standard super fund, and what are the pros and cons for people thinking about doing it?
SMSF, it's just another type of super structure. So we've got retail funds, we've got industry funds, we've got self-managed super funds. Industry funds, we all see the ads on TV. Retail funds typically linked to an advisor. Self-managed is where you do it yourself. So you're responsible for running your own super fund money. Major benefit of self-managed super funds is that, and typically why people use them in the past is a couple of reasons, but I think the main ones are to invest in direct property, whether it be residential or commercial. And more recently, in the last 10 or 15 years, you've been able to borrow within super to purchase property or other assets as well through a limited recourse borrowing structure. So, you know, if you've got a penchant for investing in direct property, you got some money in super, in a retail fund or an industry fund, you're not happy with it, you could set up a self-managed super fund and invest in direct property. Husband and wife combine their monies, whereas, you know, if you've got a retail or industry fund, it's separate. So you're combining monies to buy a property asset. See, I see it working best with, say, business owners that buy commercial premises, so they can pay themselves rent over time. I like that strategy. That works quite well.
And then they can direct their super in potentially to help pay that off as well.
That's right. So their super contributions go in the super fund, which if there's a borrowing there, pays off the borrowing.
Plus the business can pay
the rent. Yeah. So, rather than, you know, rent from someone else, your business pays someone else rent. This is going to your own super fund, helping you pay off your own. So that, I think that works well. And in some cases, or at some point, using a self-managed super fund, it can be more cost effective than using an industry or retail fund based on costs alone. So super fund costs, you know, can range because you need an accountant, you need an auditor each year to do the returns. Low balances, typically that doesn't work so well because it's a high percentage of the actual funds invested. But when you get sort of $1 million plus, you're looking at that being a cost-effective superannuation vehicle. Yeah, okay, because those costs are usually fixed, right?
Gotcha.
Whereas industry or retail, you've got percentage-based funds.
And do you still need a diversified approach within the self-managed super fund?
Yeah, so you're running the fund, so you're responsible. So the ATO looks at it every year. An auditor looks at it every year. So you need to have a documented investment strategy and you need to have a bit of a plan there as to what you're going to invest in, especially over time. As you get closer to retirement, you need to have some diversification of assets, because if you've got one property there and you have to start drawing out a pension, how are you going to draw that pension if the tenant doesn't pay each month, you know, that sort of thing. So there needs to be other assets there to reduce the risk to your retirement benefits.
Yeah, and do you provide that advice for the entire the asset structure inside the super fund?
Yeah. So we advise, especially around that super fund buying property with a bare trust or a borrowing. The key thing there is cash flow. So you've got to make sure people don't over leverage, as well as make sure they've got enough money there to meet the loan requirements, because it's your retirement money. It's very important to make sure that cash flow works in that fund. It's not like it's not as flexible as, you know, if you had it in your own name, let's say.
Yeah, gotcha. Are there any pitfalls for people to avoid in moving into this space? I can see how it can be an attractive sell. Like what are the, you spoke about balances.
Yeah, low balances versus the cost. You know, probably you need somewhere in the order of, well, the ATA is happy with a combined balance of 200, but, you know, it probably works better around that 300, 400, 500 level.
At an entry level.
At an entry level. It doesn't have to be that. You know, if you start off with 200,000, you know, had borrowing of 50%, let's say, to buy a property of 400k, you're not going to find a lot of 400k properties in Australia anymore, apart from apartments. But yeah, I think that works quite well. I really like it for business owners, commercial property. I've seen it work for residential property, people that aren't great at saving and got some good growth by using a buyer's agent in certain areas. But yeah, you really have to be tight around that cash flow and make sure you've got enough money there to pay off that loan.
Yep. And that includes probably just looking at your super flows as well, because I'm assuming you're just telling your employer, if you're employed, this is where, if you're employed, this is where it goes. It goes into the super fund now,
and the rent goes in there. If rent doesn't get paid and you're short that month, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
The other thing with super fund home loans, they're typically about 1% higher than residential normal.
And a different LVR? Is it like...
the LVRs have changed. There's a few more lenders in that space, so you can still get up to 80, I think, in some cases 90%. So,
right, okay.
But we'd never recommend that. We sort of try to tip around that 50 to 70% LVR just to make sure it works well. And then, if you can get to that level as well, the debt gets to a manageable level and you can build up other assets, you look at a second property.
Gotcha.
If we're putting this planning in place, we're not looking at buying one property. We want 3 or 4 by the time we retire for that reason that we talked about, right? One tenant doesn't pay, you don't get your pension payment for the month. So.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, some quick fire questions from the audience. I did sort of ask a few people, if you've got a financial planner in front of you, financial advisor sitting in front of you, what are the things that you'd want to ask? So I'll throw a few at you just to close off the conversation. Number one question that came up, how much do I need at retirement? I'm assuming it's like the crystal ball question.
No, it's a piece of string, right? Each person's different. Each person spends differently. And we've got, things like the age pension in place that allow you to spend more than probably what you're planning or what you're thinking about. Okay, so... how much you need, I don't know until you sit down and find out exactly what people are going to spend.
Yep.
So there's no number.
Yeah.
You hear people say it's $1 million, it's 500, it's
it's whatever you need.
Yeah, each person will be different.
Yep. When should I start taking my super? I feel like we've learnt something already today.
Yeah.
Well, depending on
it depends. So it comes
from
down
60.
Yeah, if you said I'm hating work, you push as much as you can into super before you're 60, and then turn that into an income stream and leave work, and off you go.
Yeah, gotcha. Is there anything that people need to know about with respect to that 60? Is there any rules or conditions about that? Like generally speaking,
So if you're still working, you can't access that. If you finish from some form of employment, say you had 2 jobs at 60 and you stop one, you could access your super.
Okay.
So there's a few nuances around it.
Okay.
You can access it at some level around that transition to retirement, but full access comes with some sort of finishing of employment over the age of 60.
Yep. Nice one. How should I invest my retirement savings? Again, feel like we've...
Risk profile.
Yeah.
So work out what you're comfortable with. More shares, property, you're going to get a better return over time, but have you got that time frame to put all your money in that space? Have you got are you comfortable seeing your money drop by 25% in a year if it's in that sort of space? If you can sleep well at night, that's the place to be. But yeah, it really comes down to each person's tolerance. Someone with 100,000 is probably less worried about their money than someone with $1 million. So, that's being general, but yeah.
And final one: when should I start planning for my retirement?
Today, Todd. Today.
Yes. So, all right, awesome. Great chat. Covered a lot of ground. I've learned a lot myself. So a worthwhile conversation. Thanks for being on the Season podcast.
Thank you for having me.